In this video, we count down 10 humans found inside giant snakes. I've also noticed that most of you watching this aren't subscribed yet. So if you do like the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and you can always change your mind later. And with that said, enjoy the video. Number 10. Drunk Indian Man. Photographs of giant snakes that appear to have eaten people sweep the internet every once in a while. This massive python with an enormous bulge in its stomach was initially believed to have swallowed a drunk man. Worryingly, the snake was also reported to have eaten someone in South Africa, devoured another victim in Indonesia, and frighteningly slithered all the way to China on a human-eating rampage. Giant snakes are capable of swallowing extremely large prey. It is possible that a python this size could swallow a human whole, but the idea of a serial killer snake slithering across continents is downright disturbing. Fortunately, all of the lurid stories attached to this widely circulating old photo were exposed as fakes. Be that as it may, if the prospect of a giant snake feasting on someone doesn't sound like something that might keep you awake at night, then the next clip will pull you in. Number 9. South African Boy. 11-year-old Kay Buthelezi and 2 other kids watch as a 20-foot African rock python wraps itself around their playmate and begins to squeeze the life out of him. The boys are too terrified to make a sound, and all they can do, being kids understandably, is to remain hidden up the mango tree and hope that the snake will not turn to attack them next. It will take 3 hours for the hungry python to swallow their friend whole before slithering away. By the time the kids would alert the authorities, the killer snake was long gone, leaving no trace of its victim. Police and snake experts followed a trail of flattened grass and tracks left behind on the ground, but this only took them as far as a stream nearby, with no sign of where it had exited from the water. Number 8. Eric Arrieta. Caracas Zoo employees arrive at their workstations only to be confronted by a terrifying sight: a 10-foot Burmese python attempting to swallow their colleague's head. They had to force the hungry python to release their colleague, but it was too late to save his life. The victim, who was a biology student called Eric Arrieta, was likely dead in the first few minutes of the encounter with the snake. Bite marks on Eric's left wrist suggest the snake attacked before wrapping itself around his body and crushing him to death. When his colleagues arrived at the scene, Eric's head was completely inside the snake's mouth. It is unlikely that a python as small as this one would have been able to get past the shoulder blades of a grown person. Notwithstanding, bigger pythons have been known to perform incredible feats of swallowing. Those beasts could easily swallow a person whole. Watch this next clip. Number 7. Akbar Salibiro. A massive 23-foot-long reticulated python is spotted having an abnormally enlarged belly hours after a young farmer called Akbar Salibiro was reported missing after leaving to harvest palm oil. Snakes that have recently had sizable meals often have huge bellies, but this particular python had a person's boots clearly showing through its swollen stomach. This captured the attention of villagers, with concerned friends and relatives fearing the worst. Suspecting that the unmoving python might have eaten the 25-year-old farmer, they sliced the snake open, only to have their worst fears confirmed. Akbar's lifeless body filled the giant snake's belly. Gruesome footage shows villagers pulling a corpse from the false womb of death. Up to this time, reports of pythons killing and swallowing adult humans were uncommon and mostly unconfirmed. People became wary of these large snakes, but Akbar Salibiro would however not be the last person to be pulled out of a snake's stomach in Indonesia. Number 6. Wa Tiba. 54-year-old mother of 2, Wa Tiba, is cut out of a 27-foot python after being attacked and eaten while tending to the family garden. Footage of Wa Tiba's slime-covered body being pulled out of the enormous python is horrifying, and the terrified locals likened it to a horror movie. Concerned neighbors and family members who had been looking for her after she failed to return home that evening recognized her clothes: brown leggings and a dark red top, even before the body was fully removed from the snake's stomach. Family members were terrified to think that their relative had been eaten alive, but pythons, like other constrictor snakes, will typically strike their prey with deadly power before wrapping around them in a deadly embrace and swallowing the dead victim, head first. The same thing must have happened to Wa Tiba, and all evidence pointed to that. There is some sense of consolation in knowing that someone, a relative, wasn't eaten alive by the snake that killed them. Number 5. Dalaba town resident. Another giant snake attacks in Africa. This time, a 7-year-old resident of Dalaba town in the Mamau region of Guinea was believed to have been swallowed by the massive python. These snakes are incredibly powerful, and because pythons bite first before coiling around their victims, It is possible that the old man was struck down in an ambush. The snake's huge and powerful muscles exert a constricting force that renders the victim dead or unconscious within seconds. It would be extremely difficult for a frail old man to save his life without help. Whenever a person goes missing without a trace in the village, the locals always become suspicious of big pythons found with enlarged bellies. Big pythons like this swallow their victims whole. With no carcass as a trace, villagers are left with the grisly task of recovering the victim's body from the snake's belly. Fortunately, while snake-eat-man stories are the stuff of nightmares, not all result in a fatality. Number 4. Robert Nababan. Villagers get a photo op with this monster 25-foot-long python moments before it's chopped up and served for dinner. The enormous snake made international headlines for different reasons, however. It had been involved in an extraordinary life-and-death battle in which it lost its life to a local security guard called Robert Nababan. The story goes that the guard encountered this monster snake blocking off the road through an oil palm tree farm. He tried to move it out of the way when it instinctively coiled itself around his torso and tried to bite his head, but was met with the sharp edge of a machete. The giant snake finally let up and tried to escape, but not before dealing a serious blow that left Nababan fighting for his life. When the locals found the injured guard, they rushed him to the hospital and tracked down the giant snake to finish it off. Number 3. Ataporn Bunmakchui. 38-year-old Ataporn Bunmakchui is rushed to the hospital after a horrifying encounter with a 10-foot python. The reptile had slithered into the house through the toilet plumbing and attacked Bunmakchui as he was getting into the squat posture to relieve himself. The python went for his genitals and started yanking very hard when Bunmakchui tried to get it off. The bloody struggle lasted a whole 30 minutes, with the python's clamped jaws only letting go when Bunmakchui's wife and a neighbor came to his aid. He had lost a lot of blood, but doctors were hopeful about his recovery. Meanwhile, emergency responders and animal handlers called to the scene had to dismantle the Asian-style squat toilet to free the python still twined in it. According to the emergency workers, the snake did not sustain serious injuries and will be taken away to be released back into the wild. Number 2. Mateus Behera de Arajo. 66-year-old grandpa from Cosmorama tries to uncoil a 15-foot anaconda wrapped around his grandson's body. The 8-year-old was already unconscious from the snake's crushing death grip and would likely have died from asphyxiation had help not arrived. Grandpa wrestled the 80-pound reptile for several minutes but couldn't overpower it without some help. He had to use a machete and use rocks to get the snake to free his grandson, something that took him 30 minutes to achieve. The boy was rushed to the hospital, where he received 21 stitches after sustaining bite injuries on his chest. Number 1. Federal Police of Brazil. A team of police tries to free a fellow officer from the clutches of a 26-foot-long, 210-pound anaconda. Officers are attempting to pull the anaconda's mouth open, but because the reptile's springy tissues connecting their jawbones give them a lot of room to stretch, pulling at its mouth wasn't going to work. In fact, the officers did not realize it at first, but the snake's fangs sank deeper and grasped onto their partner's arm even tighter each time they pulled. Giant snakes have several rows of sharp, recurved teeth that they use to grab onto prey. The only way to escape from this deadly grip is to work against the instinct to pull. Finally, the officer manages to dislodge his arm after pushing his hand further into the snake's mouth to create some wiggle room. The snake, however, was not done with him yet, and it would take another couple of minutes to free a second officer whose thumb got clamped over the snake's mouth during the struggle. Hey, look at you making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to smash that like icon and leave a comment. Your engagement is what keeps our curiosity going. We have lots of fantastic videos that you will enjoy. You can start by